Hi everyone, happy spring. As you can see, we still have some snow here, so I haven't been able to get any more plastic up on the hoop house. Now that spring's here, the ground is all mushy and gross and full of mud, and with the snow on top of it, it makes it nearly impossible to work out here. So I'm going to get the dome ready for the growing season, and I'll bring you along to see what I do to get things started. These videos are sponsored by our Patreon contributors. Our top contributors are greenlifeplanet.net, trueaquaponics.com, glassbottleoutlet.com, and growpockets.com. Please help support our channel by joining Patreon. During the winter, I bring in all my firewood and store it in the entrance area of the greenhouse. I don't usually give any tours or anything, so it makes a good storage area for all the wood. So I'll just bring this out, stack it back up in the outdoor wood pile. You might recall in the fall I had my rosemary that was dying off from some type of a disease, so I hacked it back. And this is what's left with it. It's actually nice and green again and is sending up some new shoots. So I'm fairly optimistic that it's going to survive. Hopefully it doesn't get re-diseased again. But it'll grow back to its huge size again in a couple of years, and we'll be able to prune off some rosemary off of it this year. Some of these longer ones I'll probably cut back again. Every year the cherry tomatoes, I'll lose a few of them and they'll drop off into the beds, and they essentially reseed themselves. So I have a ton of volunteers that have come up already, and I really only need one or two plants, so most of these are just going to get pruned out like they're weeds, and I'll save a couple of the best ones. Even though we're in the greenhouse, I still get a few weed seeds that must blow into the vents. So I'll get a few here and there, just pluck them out, and they don't cause any harm. A few weeks ago I did plant some strawberries, and they're looking really good. I'm doing a whole video dedicated just to strawberry growing, and it's going to come out later this year. I'm just going to do everything from start to finish all in one video so you can see the whole progression as I grow them. I also had a whole bunch of volunteer beets come up, and I just let them go. We like the beet greens. Unfortunately, the mice also like them, so you can see here the greens are getting topped off. Unfortunately, the mice are a problem, and the traps are somewhat effective, but these bait traps actually work much better, and they're essentially just a poison. I mentioned in the past I'm not a big fan of using them, but they are far more effective than trying to set traps all the time and disposing of the mice. The oregano has no problem overwintering, and it really grows like a weed. I would probably almost classify it as bad as trying to grow mint in the system. It just keeps spreading like crazy, and it's trying to get over into the next grow bed. But all this is going to come out. I'm probably going to cut this in half, rip this out, dry that oregano, and then just leave one little clump. When I started this plant several years ago, I just keep doing the same thing, and I pull it out and just leave one little sprig behind, and it will grow this much within the year. Now that I'm looking at this plant, I think I'm going to pull it out now. You can see even here there's a couple of new shoots coming in right at the corner here, so it's just trying to spread very aggressively. Old label for it. So that's the whole plant. I just pull the whole thing out, and now I have just some roots here. I can take one of these just like this. It's just clumps and clumps of roots. These are all little individual plants essentially. So if you want to give it away at a garden club or something like that. These things can just get broken up into lots of individual plants. Like this one I can plant and it'll come right up. So we're going to take this one, replant it right back into the media bed. Looks like I was pretty harsh with it, but this thing is going to grow like crazy. Leave it right there. The rest of this, I'll just take a nice big clump of it. Maybe a little bit more. Some of this nice young stuff. So I'll just tie a string around the base. And then I can just hang it up and let it dry out in the house. A few weeks ago I transplanted these tomato plants into here, trying to get a head start on the season. They really don't like the cold weather, so they start getting this purpley color to them. They're still growing a little bit. I'm sure they'll bounce back. The ones I did last year bounced back, but they just had a hard time the first part of the season. In this flat I got some lettuce seeds going. This is one variety and then another. And I noticed I had some other tomatoes growing in here, and these were seeds that I planted from that batch I just showed you. And then the next time I stirred things up in this bed and gave it some more water and planted the seeds, these tomatoes came up. So we're going to salvage these and plant those right now. I was able to get 6 plants out of there with a good root structure on them. And we'll take those and transplant them into the grow grips and put them in the deep water culture raft so they can sit down fairly low into the grow grips. The roots will hang out, and we'll just set it right into these rafts. The water in here is about 50 degrees still, and it's slowly going up in temperature, so they may get a little bit of shock from going from 67 degrees in our house down to 50 degrees. But I want these out of my lettuce seedlings before the roots start taking over and getting into the lettuce and making those difficult to transplant. And once these get a little bit larger and start growing, I'll move them again to space them out and put them into my permanent raft area. I had also started some other lettuce seedlings and got them going, and now that they're getting bigger in these concentrated rafts, I'll move them over into their final raft location. This has been working out really well by getting all these plants to start up in these concentrated rafts, and then I can pick and choose which plants I want to go into their final spot, and then some of these little spindly ones I can decide if I want to keep them in here a little bit longer or just get rid of them. I also have a couple rafts I left in here over the winter just to help shade the water, and they start getting some weeds growing in them also. They come right off. I'll quickly go through those other seedings. So on deck I have another flat of seedlings that are just starting to get going. A couple peppers I planted a couple of months ago, and they just do not like the cold weather at all and hardly grow at all. Once it warms up in here, they'll start taking off, and I'll transplant those into the media beds. I also have a few broccoli in here. They don't seem to mind the cold weather at all, so it will take right off once we start getting a little bit more light in here. Unfortunately, one of my tea plants didn't make it. These leaves are crunchy, so I'm going to actually harvest these and use them for tea. This plant seems to be okay. The leaves aren't crunchy yet, and there's a little bit of new growth on it. I may prune it back a little bit to try to get it to bush out, but they really do not like the cold weather that I subjected them to this winter. And as a shameless plug, these 3D printed bell siphons that I made up a year ago, they've been doing really well. This one has been constantly running without any issues. In fact, the only time it stops is when I actually pull it out to show it to somebody. So very happy with it, and I'm still selling these on my little tiny website that I have for these, so feel free to check that out. During the winter, I'll usually let the algae just keep growing on the fish tank window. It sort of helps to keep the fish from getting spooked too badly and lets them just rest over the winter. But now that spring's here and people like to actually watch them, so, including myself, so we'll get that window cleaned up and looking nice again. We're not quite ready for the outdoor bed yet, but at least it has thawed out. But we probably have another month until it's warm enough where I can risk putting plants outdoors in this. Well, that's about it for now. Sorry it's not too exciting in here yet, but once summer rolls along, these plants will really start to take off. Plus, the new greenhouse project will be fully underway, and there'll be a lot of good videos coming out this summer that will help show you how we're putting this whole thing together. Thanks for watching. As you can see, we still have plenty of snow here. Somebody keeps shooting. So I'd figure I'd bring you along into the dome. So I'd